What's going on, y'all? Welcome to the stream. Um, just want to give a big shout out to the subscribers real quick before we get started. We got some big news today. Got some breaking news coming in from China. Also got some breaking news about the blockade on the strait, and got some breaking news about Israel. Stay tuned, and y'all gotta hear this. But before we get it started, make sure y'all drop a like button, subscribe, and follow. Big boost to the channel. Um, it really helps get the channel more publicity and more promotions out there, please. But let me get this fixed real quick. Sorry about that. All right. But anyways, yeah, we got some really big news coming out here. This is our new platform that we're probably going to be using. For some of our news platforms, we're actually working on a new platform for our audiences that y'all going to be viewing. It's going to have different updates and everything else up on there. It's going to have our goals on there. That's to be continued though. But anyways, let's get to the breaking news.
And Russia and China, so let's get started with the breaking news. This morning, China's begun to threaten U.S. forces about blockading their ships near the Strait of Hormuz, as the U.S. Navy's full-scale blockade has formally begun this morning, with over 15 U.S. warships in formation near Iran. Meanwhile, Bahrain, a Gulf state, reports that they are under attack by drones and possibly even missiles, as Iran appears to have ordered new attacks either through the IRGC or its proxy forces, and we're awaiting more information about the ongoing situation. Meanwhile, elements of the U.S. Army 82nd Airborne are moving into position near Iran, and also a third U.S. aircraft carrier is moving into the area in less than 3 days, as some speculate U.S. forces may be planning a bigger operation. And we're also seeing the U.S. military airlift become much larger over the past 24 hours, which is presumed to be shuttling tons of high-powered munitions and air defense systems into the Middle East. So we have a lot of news today, and in fact, the biggest piece of news right now is China is actively getting involved with the U.S. blockade against Iran, and it looks like the situation is starting to escalate a little bit. So let's jump into our first major article, which goes to open source intel. And right now, this is our biggest story of the day. We are seeing that China is actively weighing in and getting involved in the situation about the U.S. blockade that just started a couple hours ago, and we have heard from a top Chinese official this morning about the situation. We have heard from Chinese Defense Minister Admiral Dong Jun in a message to the Trump administration and the U.S. Navy, and the Chinese Defense Minister said, "Our ships are moving in and out of the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. We have trade and energy agreements with Iran. We will respect and honor those agreements and expect others not to interfere in our affairs. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz and it is open for us." Which does also confirm to everybody that, once again, Iran was letting these Chinese vessels go in and out of Iran freely with no obstructions whatsoever, and that we had known that for a while. So when the U.S. was claiming that no ships were getting through and also Iran was blockading them all, that was simply not the case, and China was still getting their oil. As you can see right here, that's confirmed by the Chinese defense minister. So the big deal is, right here, this defense minister is now directly telling the United States to get the hell out of the way, or otherwise there might be something that happens out of this. So that's a pretty big deal, and this is very quick, by the way. The Chinese are weighing in very, very fast after this blockade just started a few hours ago. And also, we are not just hearing from the Chinese military, we're also hearing from the Chinese diplomats as well. And moving into our next one here, which goes to Evelina, we have seen that apparently China is, their full attention right now is on the blockade completely at this point, and we're seeing that apparently a foreign minister spokesperson out of China has also made a statement as well. This is according to a mainstream media outlet. They're saying that China is calling for the unobstructed navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, literally just hours after the blockade started, and they're saying it's in the common interest of the international community if the strait's secure and open. But here's the catch though, it wasn't open for everybody. The strait was closed. Iran closed the strait, and the only people getting oil or ships through that corridor right there was the Chinese, possibly the Russians, and maybe some Indian ships that were mixed in there as well. So pretty much the only ships getting through were pretty much vessels that were aligned with our enemies to a large degree. So it wasn't secure and open, but you can see here that there's currently some pretty strong language being used toward the United States by China, and I suspect we'll be seeing more of this out of the Chinese government. But also, by the way, moving into our next post here, we're finding out exactly why China is so upset about this entire situation, and this one goes to to Ocean Defender, we have seen that apparently a vessel allegedly carrying Chinese oil products apparently had to turn around before it got to the Strait of Hormuz.
Hey, I apologize, y'all. Our Rumble was messing up. We had to start the stream back over, but I mean, we're only 3 minutes in, so I apologize for that, y'all.
The breaking news. This morning, China's begun to threaten U.S. forces about blockading their ships near the Strait of Hormuz, as the U.S. Navy's full-scale blockade has formally begun this morning with over 15 U.S. warships in formation near Iran. Meanwhile, Bahrain, a Gulf state, reports that they are under attack by drones and possibly even missiles, as Iran appears to have ordered new attacks either through the IRGC or its proxy forces, and we're awaiting more information about the ongoing situation. Meanwhile, elements of the U.S. Army 82nd Airborne are moving into position near Iran, and also a third U.S. aircraft carrier is moving into the area in less than 3 days, as some speculate U.S. forces may be planning a bigger operation. And we're also seeing the U.S. military airlift become much larger over the past 24 hours, which is presumed to be shuttling tons of high-powered munitions and air defense systems into the Middle East. So we have a lot of news today, and in fact, the biggest piece of news right now is China is actively getting involved with the U.S. blockade against Iran, and it looks like the situation is starting to escalate a little bit. So let's jump into our first major article, which goes to open source intel. And right now, this is our biggest story of the day. We are seeing that China is actively weighing in and getting involved in the situation about the U.S. blockade that just started a couple hours ago, and we have heard from a top Chinese official this morning about the situation. We have heard from Chinese Defense Minister Admiral Dong Jun in a message to the Trump administration and the U.S. Navy, and the Chinese Defense Minister said, "Our ships are moving in and out of the waters of the Strait of Hormuz. We have trade and energy agreements with Iran. We will respect and honor those agreements and expect others not to interfere in our affairs. Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz and it is open for us." Which does also confirm to everybody that, once again, Iran was letting these Chinese vessels go in and out of Iran freely with no obstructions whatsoever, and that we had known that for a while. So when the U.S. was claiming that no ships were getting through and also Iran was blockading them all, that was simply not the case, and China was still getting their oil. As you can see right here, that's confirmed by the Chinese Defense Minister. So the big deal is, right here, this defense minister is now directly telling the United States to get the hell out of the way, or otherwise there might be something that happens out of this. So that's a pretty big deal, and this is very quick, by the way. The Chinese are weighing in very, very fast after this blockade just started a few hours ago. And also, we are not just hearing from the Chinese military, we're also hearing from the Chinese diplomats as well. And moving into our next one here, which goes to Evelina, we have seen that apparently China is, their full attention right now is on the blockade completely at this point, and we're seeing that apparently a foreign minister spokesperson out of China has also made a statement as well. This is according to a mainstream media outlet. They're saying that China is calling for the unobstructed navigation through the Strait of Hormuz, literally just hours after the blockade started, and they're saying it's in the common interest of the international community if the strait's secure and open. But here's the catch though, it wasn't open for everybody. The strait was closed. Iran closed the strait, and the only people getting oil or ships through that corridor right there was the Chinese, possibly the Russians, and maybe some Indian ships that were mixed in there as well. So pretty much the only ships getting through were pretty much vessels that were aligned with our enemies to a large degree. So it wasn't secure and open, but you can see here that there's currently some pretty strong language being used toward the United States by China, and I suspect we'll be seeing more of this out of the Chinese government. But also, by the way, moving into our next post here, we're finding out exactly why China is so upset about this entire situation, and this one goes to Ocean Defender. We have seen that apparently a vessel allegedly carrying Chinese oil products apparently had to turn around before it got to the Strait of Hormuz due to the U.S. blockade that just got started a few hours ago. We are hearing that apparently a Malawi-flagged crude oil tanker, which claims to be bound for China, loaded with oil from the UAE, has turned back after approaching the Strait of Hormuz from the direction of the Persian Gulf. And this vessel right here, they claim is sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department, but I haven't been able to confirm that myself. It could be, but I haven't had a chance to confirm that. But we are seeing right here in this image, there it is right there. It appears to have taken off maybe from the UAE, and it looks like it swung a U-turn right before it got to the main choke point of the Strait of Hormuz.
Sorry about that.
And as we can see right here in our next image, it appears to be it is currently putting around the strait. As you can see right there, it's sort of hanging out at like 0.6 knots, which is barely moving at all. And it looks like it is pretty much going to sit there for a while from the looks of it. So that's the situation right now. This ship apparently got scared off by the blockade. It couldn't get through, and that's apparently, according to the reports, why it did not go through the strait. So a pretty big deal, and apparently that has piqued China's interest, to say the least. But moving into our next one here, this one's going to go to Disclosed TV, and we've even gotten a presidential Truth Social post about this as well. Here's what the president said today. He said, Iran's navy is laying at the bottom of the sea, completely obliterated 158 ships, and what we have not hit are their small number of what they call fast attack ships, because we did not consider them much of a threat. And also, plot twist, by the way, the reason why they haven't hit those, the real reason why, is because they currently keep those things in hardened shelters. That's why they can't hit them. But they said in the post, warning, if any of these ships come anywhere close to our blockade, they will be immediately eliminated using the same system that they used against the drug dealers on the boats at sea. I assume he's referring to near Venezuela. He said it is quick and brutal. And he also said, P.S. 98.2% of drugs coming into the U.S. by the ocean or sea have stopped, which is completely a different situation, by the way. But as you can see here, the president's apparently worried about the fast attack ships that Iran has, and he's currently saying that the U.S. Navy is going to knock them out of the water if they see them coming anywhere near the blockade. So this suggests to me that they're expecting Iran to try to attack the blockade. So we'll have to see exactly what Iran is planning here, but that's the current claim right now out of this post. So we'll have to see where this goes, but we could be seeing some pretty big escalations coming up here in the near future. Also, moving into our next post here, this one's going to go to Insider Paper, and we've also gotten some more details, because apparently when the U.S. blockade started a couple hours ago, the U.S. Navy sent out a whole bunch of pamphlets and informational statements to mariners and people that were involved in the sea trade. So apparently they sent one out as well, and it caught the wind of the UK MTO, it looks like. They're saying here that neutral vessels currently within Iranian ports have been granted a limited grace period to depart, and it'll be specified in the announcement, apparently, that's going out from the U.S. Navy. So according to what we're seeing here, it looks like there's a small grace period to let some ships out of the area, but we'll have to see where this goes. Some people are speculating that the U.S. is going to try to bluff their way through this blockade, and then they'll try to back off of it once China starts putting pressure on the United States. We'll have to see how this turns out, because right now China's getting involved very, very early. So they're taking a very active approach to this, and we'll have to see how it goes, because in order for the U.S. to enforce the blockade, they will have to seize or fire on Chinese vessels, and that could lead to a sketchy situation. So we'll just have to see. But moving into our next post here, we also get some more details about exactly what this U.S. blockade looks like. And according to reports, there are more than 15 U.S. warships in place to support the blockade. Apparently, the aircraft carriers involved, there's multiple guided missile destroyers, an amphibious assault ship, and several other warships that are forming this blockade right here. And also, obviously, they do have helicopter capabilities, and they are able to marshal these commercial vessels and hold them into specific holding patterns. So it's a full-on blockade. It's a real deal. And right now there's 15 U.S. warships that are currently enforcing that near the exit of the Strait of Hormuz. So it is the real deal. It's not a phony. It's not a fake. So it's real. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to open source intel yet again. We've also heard some more wild statements coming out of Iran about this situation, and the Iranian military spokesman said today that if the U.S. imposes a blockade, which plot twist they have, then Iran says it will decisively implement a permanent mechanism to control the Strait of Hormuz. Now, I will say that right there is complete bluster. There's no way for Iran to exact some new measure to control the strait. They're already controlling it as it is, and they're already pretty much have it under their leverage at this point. So there's nothing more that Iran could really do. So whatever they're talking about here is completely bogus, whatever they're talking about. So that is what it is. More propaganda coming out of Iran, and they're probably trying to figure out what they're going to do about the U.S. blockade. That's probably what they're thinking about, and we'll have to see. They could be referring to mines. I guess that's one thing they could be referring to. But as we're aware right now, there's already mines in the Strait of Hormuz. So, if that's what they were talking about, that's really not new. But moving into our next one here, this one goes to Yaroslav Trofimov. And while the entire situation with the blockade is happening, right now we're seeing that Iran or its proxy groups, one or the other, is starting to attack the Gulf states again, and it looks like Bahrain is the main target of this attack. We are seeing that apparently the ceasefire is not holding well when it comes to Bahrain, because we have heard from an official that apparently Bahrain intercepted 7 drones in just the past 24 hours, while the ceasefire is allegedly still in place with the Gulf states, Israel, and everybody else included. So we are seeing here that apparently they are still shooting down drones, and we're not exactly sure who fired them. It could be the IRGC that fired them, or it could be maybe the proxy groups in the area. We're not entirely sure, but whoever did it, it is Iran behind it ultimately. Iran funds the proxy groups, and they also give orders to them as well. So whoever it was Iran through one means or another, and they are firing drones once again at Gulf states, and Bahrain is under attack yet again. So we'll have to see how the U.S. responds to this right here. So far, we have not heard a official U.S. acknowledgement of these attacks, but of course, it's basically a breaking of the ceasefire, so we should hear something out of the United States pretty soon. But in the meantime, though, moving into our next post here, this one goes to Ocean Technical, and we've also seen that the massive U.S. Air Force airlift into the Middle East from North America and Europe is still ongoing as we speak, and it looks like it is ramping up over the last 24 hours, and we are seeing that here on Flight Radar 24 over the last 24-hour period. So let's take a look at this right here. This is a pretty informative little video, and as you can see right here, there are a whole bunch of flights. You can see here a whole bunch of RCH, a whole bunch of Moose, and they are heading out that way right now to the Middle East, and it is nonstop. We presume that they are shuttling in high-powered munitions to restock the forces in the area, and also they're probably bringing in more air defense for the Gulf states when the missiles start firing once again, so that way they can defend themselves properly. So as you can see, it is a very, very busy last 24 hours, indicating that war is coming yet again, and that's proof of it right here in this little video. But moving on from this though, and moving into our next one, this one is going to go to Visegrad 24. And we can also see another U.S. preparation for probably increased war efforts, I would imagine. We're seeing that a third U.S. aircraft carrier, the USS George H.W. Bush, has reportedly crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and is expected to arrive in the area of U.S. operations near Iran within 3 to 5 days, potentially before the end of the current ceasefire. So we believe it will be arriving. We believe it will be in about 3 days or so. And in addition to this aircraft carrier arriving, which was expected, we are seeing that elements of the 82nd Airborne of the U.S. Army are starting to move into place as well. So if the U.S. is planning something, the pieces are starting to come together as of the next couple of days. So we could be seeing something imminently, possibly in addition to the blockade. We'll just have to see, but that right now is the force movements currently into the area. But moving into our next post here, this one's going to go to Ocean Warfare. And we've also seen an interesting sight right now. We've seen that the newly acquired Russian Mi-28 helicopters that Russia just delivered right before the Iran-US war started, they're apparently been seen operating over Tehran. So they are still functioning, and it looks like the U.S. did not destroy those yet. So, for whatever it's worth, Iran has some Russian helicopters, but they might not have them for too much longer. Now that they're flying around Tehran and they're visible, that might become a U.S. target right there. So sadly, I can't show you this entire video right here, but I can show you at least a little snippet of it. As you can see right there, there is that Mi-28 right there on the screen. That is it flying over Tehran, as you can see. And there's another image of one right there. You can see there's the rooftop of a building here in the capital city, and there is the Russian helicopter that is now operated by the Iranians. So Russia is giving support. I know the U.S. has been trying to pretend like they're not, but clearly there's support right there, and that was delivered before the war even started. So that's also proof that Russia is involved in one way or another, giving intelligence, munitions, helicopters, etc., that we can see right here in the video. But moving into our next post here, this one's going to go to War Translated, and we also have some news here. We have some pretty decent news about Hungary, because remember, yesterday, Viktor Orban got defeated after about 16 years in power. He got defeated in the election pretty badly, actually. And now we're seeing that a new fella is taking charge in Hungary. His name is Magyar. I believe it's Peter Magyar. I believe that's his name. We are seeing that he is making some statements today that is very pertinent to the Ukraine war effort. So let's move into that news. And as we can see right here in this post from War Translated, Magyar allegedly stated that the people in Hungary know that Ukraine is the victim of this war, meaning the Russian war on Ukraine. And regarding the 90 billion euro loan, Magyar supports the agreement reached in December and does not plan to challenge it. However, I think I heard in a different post that he's saying that the Hungary might opt out of that because they're currently having financial difficulty, but he's not going to oppose the agreement apparently. He also added that he will not actively seek ties with Russia. However, if Putin calls me, he said he will pick up the phone, and he said in any case he would ask Putin to end the war. So like I sort of mentioned last night, this fella here is not going to be like like a very avid pro-Ukraine supporter, but that's not needed. All we needed was Orban to get the hell out of the way, because he was obviously being way too friendly with Putin, and that wasn't good for Europe, and that wasn't good for Ukraine either. So as you can see here, it looks like he's going to be taking a much removed stance from supporting Russia, this fella here, and it looks like he will once again not obstruct the loan to Ukraine, which means Ukraine will be armed with that loan very, very soon, and it looks like it will be generally a better situation. So we'll be waiting for more statements from this fella right here, but I will say that is a promising start that we're seeing right now. But moving into our next post here, this one is going to go to Visegrad 24. Meanwhile, let's move on to our Ukraine-Russia news, because this morning we've seen something very big that has happened inside of Russia. We see here that an attack was reportedly targeting one of the largest phosphate fertilizer plants in the entirety of Europe, which is apparently in Russia. We see that a fire broke out in the Vologda region, and the cause is reported to be a drone strike on the facility, and the plant is one of the major producers of ammonia and nitrate fertilizers, which are materials that can also be used in the production of gunpowder and other munitions in war. So it looks like it was hit, and there's a major fire right now on this facility, which is obviously not good for air quality, I would say, but that's beside the point. Let's take a look at the video and see the fire on this facility. And as you can see here, this is the fertilizer plant that you see right here. Apparently the guy's filming from a rooftop or a stack, it looks like, and he's about to pan over here to the left. He's about to pan over, and there is the fire right over there. You can see the smoke rising up, and there's a little something going on over there on the left. So not a good situation, I would say. And right now it looks like the fire might be contained from the looks of it. It looks like it's one area that's currently, I'm seeing some black smoke in over there. So we'll have to see how this goes, but it looks like it could be a bad situation right over here. He's panning over to it some more right there. So yeah, not looking too good right there. That's the largest plant right there in Europe that makes phosphate fertilizer. But I got another angle of this, by the way. Let's go ahead and jump into our next post here, which goes to Tendar. We've also gotten a second video that appears to show the angle here from the roadway, showing where the Ukrainian drones allegedly struck the chemical plant in the Vologda region. And like they said, geolocation suggests that an ammonia production plant has been hit, and that does appear to be the target that we're seeing here, if that geolocation is accurate. So let's take a look at our second video of this fire. And there it is right there. As you can see, that's the plant, and it looks like there is the black smoke rising up from it. There's a little bit of smoke right there coming out of a smokestack, which is normal, but that other smoke is not normal, though. That is definitely not. So that does suggest that there's a fire on this location, and once again, not very good for Russia. It's coming at a bad time right now. There's a fertilizer shortage largely around the world due to the Iran war and the Strait of Hormuz blockade. So not good for Russia, I would say. It looks like they will be having some troubles, some more woes, as they call them. But moving into our next post here, we do have a very, very big story from Disclosed TV about a new U.S. defense partnership with Indonesia. Let's take a look. And as we see right here in the document, this is what it says. It says the U.S. Secretary of War and the Indonesian Minister of Defense announced the establishment of the Major Defense Cooperation Partnership between the U.S. and Indonesia. And here is what it says it includes. It says the military modernization and capacity building, training and professional military education, and exercises and operational cooperation. So it looks like we have a brand new defense cooperation agreement, which is quite interesting, and that is something we will be watching. We'll be seeing how that turns out, and if it pisses off any other larger nations that may not like that. So we'll just have to see, but that right now is a brand new partnership that was just announced. But moving into our next article here, we also have another one from Open Source Intel. And this is actually a fresh piece of news. I just added this right before I was about to stop filming the video right here. This is another piece of news. We have heard that the United States president's apparently made another statement about Cuba, and he's been saying this a lot, and it looks like he might have repeated it again according to this post right here. Apparently, from what they're saying, he said, we're going to do this, meaning Iran, and we may stop by Cuba after we're finished with this. So we don't know when the Iran war situation is going to be finished, by the way. There's no timeline on that. And also, right now, Cuba, I mean, that seems to be a very low priority at this point. Right now, we're in a bit of a crisis right now with Iran and the Strait of Hormuz. So I don't think anybody really cares about Cuba. I think Cuba might be a side note at this point because we're in a bit of a quagmire right now with Iran. So it'd probably be best to stick to what we got going on right now, since we couldn't pull this one off quite really smoothly. So, you know, Cuba may be coming soon, but we'll have to see. That's currently the statement right now from the United States officials. But with that, folks, that is actually our last piece of news of the video. So if you found today's video informative and found it to keep you up to date, go ahead and smack that subscribe button to get notified of our most recent.
Now, let me tell you something. So, I mean, do y'all think that China's going to get involved? Get active in chess? Let me know. Um, I'll let you know my opinion once I actually hear everybody else's. But that's all the news we have for the day. Well, for right now, we might be back on later on after we get some updates on this blockade, if any major news actually happens. So stay tuned. Make sure y'all smash that like button and the subscribe button.